the world sails into fjord-riddled Iceland to discover a stunning combination of lush scenery and dramatic volcanic landscapes, and to delve into the legendary Viking sagas of history. In search of calmer seas, the thrilling journey bypassed the Faroe Islands to head straight to the beautiful snow-capped Seyðisfjörður before sweeping around the island, stopping in various ports before reaching Reykjavik. On board with us, lecturer Professor Darren Zook is providing insights into this fascinating country.
It's easy to romanticize places like Scotland and Iceland, the Faroe Islands, because they're beautiful landscapes now, but when you see it from the point of view of the present, it's a very different landscape. Iceland was brutal. Iceland, the Faroe Islands, settling them was brutal. It was not an attractive life. A lot of settlers simply died because the environment was too harsh to survive in. Iceland used to have lots of trees. It doesn't have trees anymore because they had to cut them all down to keep warm. They had to cut them down to build the structures that are in Iceland right now. So it was one of these things where you were fleeing something, either you needed the land or you were fleeing political oppression to the point where there was no turning back. You got to Iceland, you made the best of it. And it was not an easy life. If you read the Viking sagas, a lot of people died and a lot of people killed each other over their land. As you wander through the landscape here, it really is like you're living history, and you should let the landscape inspire you, but also respect the fact of how many people had to struggle with their lives to settle the landscape you see in front of you. What's interesting about Greenland, the Faroe Islands, and Iceland is how they all have very different forms of energy to tap into. The Faroe Islands potentially has oil wealth in the sea, and they're going to have to learn how to exploit that. Iceland has always had geothermal energy, which they've been very successful at exploiting and maybe exporting soon. And what Greenland has is Greenland has mineral wealth that's in the soil. And so all three countries potentially have either energy resources or mineral resources they can use to generate the wealth they need to take care of their energy needs. One of the things to remember in a landscape like this is it might be a beautiful landscape, but it's a very haunting and a brutal landscape. So it takes a truly hardy kind of person makes you want to leave everything behind and settle in a landscape like this.
The battle I'm reenacting is there are two settlers. They have a different opinion of who owns the land.
After a surprising change of weather, the Vikings of Grundarfjörður boarded the world and began their epic battle in the plaza. With impressive skill and cunning, these warriors showed residents what it truly means to be a Viking.
Now I will take the ship.
Meanwhile, in gale-force winds, Mr. Bernie opened our shuffleboard court by cutting the ribbon and playing the first puck. Not usually known as an extreme sport, our intrepid participants braved icy weather conditions in a very competitive knockout competition, which was won by Dr. Wertheim. The expedition to East Greenland has kicked off with much excitement at the first sightings of enormous icebergs and sea ice. The expedition will bring residents up to the highest latitudes of Scoresbysund and the wilderness of the east, south and west coast of Greenland. To explore the magnificence of this country from a different perspective, the world drone was flown, withstanding the cold winds and even the icing up of the batteries to bring back this stunning footage.
Navigation in Greenland can be quite challenging because it's one of the least charted areas in the world. Then of course you have the aspect of the ice, and what we are doing is that we are looking at the ice charts and satellite pictures and so on in order to see what the actual situation is. So at least we have a fairly good picture of the amount of ice. Of course, when you go in ice, the most important part is that when it becomes a lot of ice, dense ice, then you reduce your speed to enable you to maneuver properly among the icebergs. Then it's like once we are outside the coast at night in the hours of darkness, then we always went very far off the coast in order to be in an area that had much less probability of ice. But we do have, in addition to our radar seeing ice, also the forward-looking sonar could see the ice, and we also have special ice searchlights, in addition to thermal cameras that can see the ice at night. So we are very well equipped. One of the things is I get a lot of questions about how can you see if the ice is going further out underneath the water when you're close to the ice. And yeah, the water is very clear in Greenland, most places, so you kind of can see the color of the ice as it's protruding out underneath the water. And when it goes deeper down, you can actually see it on the sonar, how far out the ice is going. So we do have a lot of equipment to help us making the right decisions and provide a safe passage in those waters. Taking the ship into the cut in the rocks or in the mountainside was something that I decided to do after talking to Philip Krösinger, which was our local advisor for the area. He has spent several seasons in the Scoresbysund area, and he said this is quite some amazing spot. And of course, when we came close, it was very nice conditions, no wind and almost no current. And of course, approaching, according to his information, it's very deep all the way in. It was using the forward-looking sonar, and you can clearly see the mountain sides underwater. So we just went in a little bit, and then even when we were at the furthest in, we still had about 120 meters under the keel. It didn't look like that, but there was still plenty of water. And when you look at the drone footage that was taken from above afterwards, it certainly looked like there was a lot more space than it looked like from the ship.